I glanced across at Little Man, his face lit in eager excitement. I knew he could not see the soiled covers or the marred pages where he sat, and even though his penchant for cleanliness was often annoying, I did not like to think of his disappointment, and we saw the books as they really were. But there was nothing I could do about it, so I opened my book to its center and began browsing through the spotted pages. Girls with blonde braids and boys with blue eyes stared up at me. I found a story about a boy and his dog lost in a cave, and began reading while Miss Crocker's voice droned on monotonously. Suddenly I grew conscious of a break in that monotonous tone, and I looked up. Miss Crocker was sitting at Miss Davis's desk, with the first grade book stacked before her, staring fiercely down at Little Man, who was pushing a book back upon his desk. "What's that you said, Clayton Chester Logan?" she asked. The room became gravely silent. Everyone knew that Little Man was in big trouble, for no one ever called Little Man Clayton Chester, unless she or he meant serious business. Little Man knew this too. Okay, so just pausing really quick and reminding us about the last question. The last question is, why does he get in trouble, right? And how does he do it? So let's just review the question really quick. Why does Little Man get in trouble? Why does he do this? So looks like we need to keep that in mind as we read along. Okay. Little Man knew this too. His lips parted slightly as he took his hands from the book. He quivered, but he did not take his eyes from Miss Crocker. I said, "May I have another book, ma'am?" he squeaked. "Please. That one's dirty." "Dirty?" Miss Crocker echoed, appalled by such temerity. She stood up, gazing down upon Little Man like a bony giant. But Little Man raised his head and continued to look into her eyes. "Dirty? And just who do you think you are, Clayton Chester? Here the county is, giving us these wonderful books during these hard times, and you're going to stand there and tell me that these books are too dirty? Now you take that book or get nothing at all." Little Man lowered his eyes and said nothing as he stared at the book. For several moments he stood there, his face barely visible above the desk. Then he turned and looked at the few remaining books, and, seeming to realize that they were as badly soiled as the one Miss Crocker had given him, he looked across the room at me. I nodded, and Little Man, glancing up again at Miss Crocker, slid the book from the edge of the desk, and with his back straight and his head up, returned to his seat. Miss Crocker sat down again. "Some people around here seem to be giving themselves airs. I'll tolerate no more of that," she scowled. "Sharon Lake, come get your book." I watched Little Man as he scooted into his seat beside two other little boys. He sat for a while with a stony face looking out the window, then, evidently accepting the fact that the book in front of him was the best that he could expect, he turned it and opened it. But as he stared at the book's inside cover, his face clouded, changing from sulky acceptance to puzzlement. His brows furrowed. Then his eyes grew wide, and suddenly he sucked in his breath and sprang from his chair like a wounded animal, flinging the book to the floor and stomping madly upon it. Okay, so I'm going to take out this highlighting. Well, actually, we're still going to leave it. So I'm actually going to move my green highlighting here because I want to leave this open for a different color. So here we see, as far as looking at the books, just kind of reflecting, once again, you should be asking yourself, like, what's going on right now? So we know right now that Little Man's getting in trouble, and ask yourself, why is he getting in trouble? So let's go back here. So we see that when the teacher asks him to repeat himself, he says here, "May I have another book, please? That one's dirty." So that already kind of tells us like how he starts getting in trouble. So let's highlight that a certain color. Maybe we can do this like light green. So we'll do that light green. And then we see that his teacher does not react well to this. And then when she asks him, "Why do you want another color?" his response is that his book is too dirty. Okay, so then the moment doesn't stop there though, right? So what happens after? She tells him to be grateful for what he has, and he ends up having a seat, But then in this last sentence, it says that he starts looking at the book, and then his eyes grew wide, and suddenly he sprang from his chair like a wounded animal, flinging the book onto the floor and stomping madly upon it. So I'm going to highlight that green too. Because we know if he was getting in trouble just for asking for a new book, and he was being told to be grateful, then the fact that he's stomping on it, this is going to get him in trouble too. Okay, so this is where our reading will pause. We'll finish this chapter tomorrow. But now we're left with the question of like, what does he see that makes him so angry? And that question will be answered tomorrow in tomorrow's reading. But for today, we will close by answering one more text-dependent question. So we're left with number 3 right now. Who is TJ and how is he described? So as usual, I'm just going to go, we haven't read about TJ in today's reading. That was mostly yesterday's reading. But I know that we did a good job highlighting, so I'm just going to go back and take a look. So we know that TJ is the one who joins them on their walk to school. And we know that he looks like he's really skinny. He doesn't always have the best clothes. He failed the mom's class yesterday, or not yesterday, last year. Okay, so far, kind of like getting a sense of TJ, we kind of know that he likes sharing gossip. Little man's trying to hide his tears from him. So I think kind of going this, it kind of gives us a sense that TJ is not the type of person that you want to trust with your secrets, maybe. Or feelings, since he might not be very nurturing with that. Okay, so I think out of all of them, I'm gonna look for the one where he gets his little brother in trouble. So here on page 11, that's when it's described that he gets his brother in trouble to try to get himself out of trouble. And I think that this one tells me the most about him. So I'm going to copy this one. Okay, I'm going to start just answering the question first. So TJ is Stacy's friend. I'm going to put in the text, it says, then paste without formatting. So this is the quote where he says, when Mama asked me about it, I just said old Claude was always sneaking up there to get some of that free candy Mr. Caleb give out sometimes, and I had to go and get him because I knowed good and well she didn't want us up there. Okay, this is something he says, so once again I'm going to put the extra quote. Okay, anyway, so this is page 26, I believe, right? I'll double check it in a second. Okay, so I'm going to put this means that TJ blamed going to on his little brother in order to get out of getting in trouble. Okay, so I'm going to leave the last part up to you if you're following along with me, but tell me what that shows. So this shows that TJ, and then just finish that question by telling me, like, what do you think that shows us about him? Okay. Okay, I double checked my pages, and it's actually page 11, so I was way off, sorry. So I'm going to fix it to say 11. And then remember that we already started looking at this question, why does little man get in trouble? So we highlighted that light green. And that reminds me, like, since we're going to post our questions today in the discussion board, hopefully you've been taking some notes as you go along. I know that I have to get into the habit too, because I have this one so far. So why is he upset to have him as a teacher? Why does Papa say that Cassie will understand the importance of the land one day? So all I have to do for the discussion board, is come prepared with that question tomorrow in Zoom, or I could also post it on the discussion board. Okay, and then I'm just going to create maybe a few questions before, but maybe like one of the questions I had throughout this is why does Little Man's new book bother him so much? Okay, so, or another question I kind of had was, like this part where she says that she doesn't approve of group responses. So I'm going to ask that the question, why doesn't Cassie approve of group responses? That way I'll have my questions ready to go when I post them for the discussion or when I discuss it on Zoom. Okay, so that concludes our completion of our homework together. Remember that tomorrow we're on track to finish chapter 1. So tomorrow we'll be reading pages 24 to 30. We'll be answering the last text dependent question as well. So thank you for listening if you tuned in with me.